Today, we're diving into one of the wildest paradoxes of the internet age. It's the strange, totally counterintuitive thing that happens when trying to hide something online, is the very thing that makes it explode in popularity. Come on, we've all been there, right? That cringy old photo, that comment you made late at night, that little digital ghost you just wish would vanish forever. It's a feeling pretty much everyone has in this super connected world. But what if you could actually, legally, make it happen? Well, over in the European Union, you kinda can. It's called the right to be forgotten, and the idea is pretty simple. It lets you go to search engines like Google and ask them to remove links with your personal info. Basically making your digital past way, way harder to find. Sounds amazing, right? Like a digital reset button? But, well, it's not always that straightforward. To really get why this can go so wrong, we have to go back to the case that gave this whole thing its name. This is the story of how a simple desire for privacy backfired in the most spectacular way possible. Okay, so picture this. It's 2003. An environmental photographer is taking thousands of pictures of the California coastline to document erosion. One of those photos just happens to include the massive clifftop home of the one and only Barbra Streisand. She finds out, and worried about her privacy, files this huge lawsuit to get that one single photo taken down. Now, here's the crazy part. Before she filed that lawsuit, you know how many times that photo had been downloaded? A grand total of 4 times. And get this, 2 of those downloads were by her own lawyers. It was literally a needle in a 12,000 photo haystack. Nobody knew it existed. And then the lawsuit hit the news. All of a sudden, that totally obscure photo became an internet sensation. In just the next month, it was downloaded over 420,000 times. Her attempt to make it disappear made it one of the most famous pictures in the entire collection. And just like that, the Streisand Effect got its name. It's this bizarre, unofficial law of the internet where trying to censor something or get it removed only manages to shine a massive spotlight on it, making it more famous than it ever would have been otherwise. So let's fast forward. How did this same effect play out in the biggest case for the right to be forgotten? This is where it gets really paradoxical. It's the story of a guy who just wanted to be left alone and ended up becoming the most famous example in history of someone failing to be forgotten. Okay, so meet Mario Costeja González. Way back in 1998, a local newspaper in Spain published a little notice about his property being auctioned off to pay a debt. Years and years later, that debt was long gone, totally settled, but that old article was still the first thing anyone saw when they Googled his name. All he wanted was for this old, irrelevant, and totally resolved issue to stop haunting him online. The irony here is just, wow. On one hand, you have his goal, which was super simple, make one little, outdated piece of local news go away. And on the other hand, you have what actually happened. His name is now forever linked to a landmark European court ruling that lawyers and students all over the world study. He wanted to be less famous. He became infinitely more so. And just look at the data. Before this all went to court, there were basically 0 searches for his name on Google. He was just a regular guy. After the ruling, boom. Interest in him exploded, and it's been there ever since. The legal fight he started to be forgotten is the only reason any of us remember his name at all. So this makes you wonder, right? Why does this happen to some people, but not others? What are the tripwires that turn a quiet request for privacy into this massive public spectacle? Well, it turns out there are 3 key things that seem to trigger it. So it really boils down to these 3 variables. First, who is the person? Second, what's the information they're trying to hide? And third, and this one is maybe the most important, what did they do during the whole process? All right, factor 1 is pretty obvious. If you're a celebrity or a politician, people are just naturally more interested in you. The media spotlight's already there, so any move you make to hide something is probably going to become a story. Now, González wasn't a public figure, which should have meant his risk was low. Factor 2 is all about the info itself. A minor financial problem from 20 years ago? Honestly, that's not very scandalous. But if the information is about something serious, or as the research calls it, a significant transgression against morality, people are way more likely to pay attention. Like that story about the teacher who lost her job because an old adult video resurfaced? That's the kind of stuff that really gets people talking. And that brings us to the last and maybe most crucial factor, the person's own actions. This is what sealed the deal for González. After he won his case, the court gave him the option to have his name scrubbed from the public legal documents. And incredibly, he said no. With that one decision, he personally tied his name to the very story he wanted everyone to forget. It's kind of like that other teacher who posted a photo of herself as a drunken pirate. When you're the one who puts it out there, it's a lot harder to take it back. So with all these huge risks, you have to ask the big question. With the Streisand effect always lurking, does the right to be forgotten even work, or is it just a broken tool? Well, first, let's just look at the sheer scale of this. Since the law was created, almost 1.2 million people have filed requests with Google alone. They've asked to have nearly 4.5 million different websites removed from their search results. That is a lot of people trying to use this right. So what happens to all those requests? As you can see, Google actually grants a little over half of them. And here's the key. This happens quietly between the person and the search engine. This process keeps the vast majority of these cases from ever going to court and ever hitting the news. So what's the final verdict? Well, for now, the Streisand effect is actually pretty rare when it comes to the right to be forgotten. For most people, the system works quietly and does its job. But, and this is a really big but, the risk is never zero. As more and more people use this right, that potential for spectacular backfire is always going to be there. Ultimately, it just comes back to that one fundamental truth of our digital lives. Once something is out there, it can be copied, shared, and saved. Hitting delete doesn't really mean it's gone forever. Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. We're all building a digital legacy every single day with every click and every post. The internet has a very long memory. So the real question is, what's the story it's going to tell about you?